I was actually kind of surprised by the Gen Z approach and, some of what they were saying at the end of the day.
They're leading by example. Why are they not leading by example with AI?
I'm working on it. That's the next deliverable. Peter and yoga poses. Yeah, no.
That drives me nuts because that is reinforcing the false idea in people's heads that you can just say a few words and get something valuable.
Hey, good morning, David.
Peter.
How are you today?
Good. I'm good. Happy Tuesday, actually, since it
Yes.
it is the Tuesday after Labor Day. I just finished putting away all my open-toed shoes, my white shoes, and my white belts until next year.
I love it. So you do that, and I live down by the shore, so we call it what do you call it? Now it's local summer. So when all the visitors go away, and we can actually enjoy the beach.
Nice. Nice. Honestly, I think sometimes fall is the best time at a beach anywhere. It's just fantastic.
Oh, I love it in the fall, especially September when it's still warm, the water's still warm, everything is perfect, but the beaches are virtually empty and there's no traffic and you can go to the restaurants again and you can get on the beach and you can find parking and it's so much better.
Nothing better than enjoying the off season. I know I've said many times that my favorite time to hike is the dead of winter when the
Hmm.
trails are empty and you can see because there's no leaves on the tree and the vistas are amazing and it's calm and peaceful. Um,
Now,
Speaking of calm and peaceful, we have a really good topic today. But we're going to talk about sort of this really interesting paper that we read about shame using AI and how it affects executives. But before we get there, um, I'm always curious, like, have you used anything cool lately on the AI front? What have you been doing personally with AI? Any good stories to tell or discoveries to share?
yeah, always look, like you, I play constantly. I think there's markets changing so fast and my interests are like yours, fairly wide. I like to look at everything and play with everything, whether technology or otherwise. So I had bought it took a while to get it, but I bought the Jetson Super Nano development kit a while back. I had some ideas for a product of mine and I kind of just wanted to see if it was capable of doing what I thought it was doing. So for those of you that don't know, the Jetson Super Nano development kit it's an NVIDIA product. It's a small little tiny board. It's basically a supercomputer on a board. The thing is incredibly powerful for the size of it. It's probably 4 inches by 4 inches, if it's even that big. Has a very powerful NVIDIA chip on it, and it runs Linux. So I run Ubuntu Linux on it. Um, and then I what I did was I attached this. I don't know, it's like a $15 little camera to it. It's this tiny little camera because one of the things I wanted to do with the device was object detection, recognition, pose analysis, like, monitor somebody's gait as they walk and assess it over time and all sorts of little things I wanted to do with it. So I started, playing with it. Really powerful, but, and look, I haven't coded it in a while, even though I've coded for years. And so I'm certainly rusty. And I think, why not use the tools to do some of this work? Because it's just it's so much faster, it's so much easier. So, of course, I have Cursor, I have Aider, I have a couple of tools. I have Claude Code, and I kind of go back and forth with all of them. But I was using Cursor for this one, and what I was using the YOLO SDK that's out there for doing object analysis and detection and pose analysis and all those types of things, and using that with Cursor and getting the camera fired up. It was incredibly fast to
That's really
generate.
cool.
It's amazing actually how fast I can get the code. Like within an hour, I had code running and the camera working, and it's just amazing how much you can do so fast with these tools.
So the real question is, do you have it giving you real-time feedback on your
Not
yoga
yet.
poses yet?
Uh, not quite yet. I'm working on it. That's the next deliverable. Peter and yoga poses. Yeah, no. Anybody that knows me knows me. I'm not exactly tiny, so I can see me in yoga poses.
All right, well, all right, get to work on that.
I will. But I think it kind of dovetails into what we're talking about and how all these tools are out there yet. And I was surprised when you sent me this article this morning about how there's a massive gap out there between the use of AI. And I was actually kind of shocked.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. Okay, so before we jump into the real discussion, the article we're talking about, it was a paper. We found an article and then we read the paper. So the paper was published by a company called WalkMe, which is part of SAP. and it's just called something like the State of Digital Adoption 2025. And in it, they
Right.
used a couple of methods. Let's talk, being the data people that we are, we should be clear about
Mhm.
where this data comes from. So
Yeah.
they used a combination of some surveys that they sent out. They sent out surveys in Q3 and Q4 2024. So, there's a little bit of a time lag between the surveys and now. Obviously, in the world of AI, that feels like eons. So take that into account when you look at those results. They surveyed about 1,700 so-called executives, and I say so-called, or senior enterprise leaders was the term they used in the methodology. It's hard to tell exactly who they were. They were a mix of C-level, director, function heads. So I'm not sure all completely executive in the traditional sense, and a little over 2,000 other employees. And they also drew data from some unspecified internal research. So presumably, metrics from the usage of their tools and things like that. So, yeah, so that's the survey.
And it looks like they did a pretty wide industry distribution as well between tech and financial services and manufacturing and healthcare. It seemed fairly broad.
Yeah, it didn't seem overly focused on any particular industry. I looked at it, and it kind of looks like it more or less mirrors the distribution of industries at large in the economy. Yeah, and it was, I'd say it was more, about half the survey respondents were in the US, Canada, and Japan. Europe and the UK were another 30%, and then the rest of the world rounded it out. And those are very rough numbers, but so seems like certainly not academic level of rigor and disclosure around the survey, but it seems like they disclosed some details about where it came from and who the respondents were. So I'd say medium level of confidence in this one.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, because us being data people, I mean, and a number of, and just throwing it out there just for observation more than anything. And it seems like the distribution of AI use really is, I would say, largely in the United States to a large degree. I think there are restrictions in other countries. The sample size relative to geographic and the cross section of what do you call industries along the cross section of levels, do you think it's enough? The sample size was large enough to get a very accurate understanding of use. Just going to question. I'm just asking. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. It's really hard because I think, without knowing exactly who the leaders were and how they broke down and seeing the data at a granular level, there's certainly, it's not a big enough sample that you could automatically say it's robust
Right.
and rich enough, right? So,
Fair enough.
I think all of that's to say, interesting data point, which we're about to reveal, kind of the big reveal of what some of our
Yes, exactly.
takeaways from this report were. But take it with a grain of salt. The data may not be 100% accurate. And given that it was, up to a year ago, it also, things change rapidly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what's the punchline here? I think there were kind of two punchlines.
Yes.
You want to go first with what you drew from this report? I thought was interesting.
What I find interesting, there are some people at the senior level using it, not admitting to it, which I thought
Yeah.
was kind of interesting, actually. And I could kind of see why they wouldn't do it. I mean, look, I understand and I appreciate as an executive why you're not going to walk into another senior executive meeting and go, "Hey guys, look what I put together with the greatest tools out there," when you're paying me seven-figure salary. I mean, I can kind of get that.
Right. No, I think that whole sense of shame or not wanting to admit you're using AI, it's something we've talked about a couple of times before, and I think it's very real. It feels to a lot of people, and I'll be honest, it feels to me sometimes like I'm cheating when I use AI. I have to remind myself that this is a tool that's real, it's here, it's part of our
Right.
fabric of our world now, and I could either choose not to use it and handicap myself, or I could use it. And the big asterisk, which we can come back to later, is you have to use it the right way. You have to use it
Right.
fairly, responsibly, maturely, etc. But
Right. Right.
we've talked. It's crazy. Like I know we've talked in the past about how students are being told they're cheating for using AI, and even adults at work feel like maybe they're cheating by using AI. And this survey basically found that you're right. These executives, a pretty good number of them, I think it said, I don't remember the exact, we can get into the details, but the takeaway was a lot of executives use it regularly and don't admit it and feel a sense of shame about it. Like, wow.
So I think there's a
Um,
couple of things going on here, which I find fascinating. You're right. I think so. More than half wouldn't admit they're actually using it, which I find fascinating. I think there's a whole other area I know we're going to pivot to a little bit later, so we'll discuss it now. Uh, Now, hiding the habits, but I do find that a lot of organizations seem to, and I'm shocked by this, they all want AI. They all talk about AI. But when you get in the weeds, they do everything possible to stop them from actually effectively using it. I feel like a lot of them. They make it very difficult to use the good models. They make it, and they're always using it at the periphery. But, I still am shocked. Like, what is the impact of this, do you think, Dave, at the end of the day?
So I think that's another great observation. That was the other key thing in this study that jumped out at me was this massive gulf between these same executives who are lying about their own use of AI, right, are
Right.
also very much publicly stating that AI will drive their company, that they're expecting tremendous benefits and transformation, right? So they appear to be very bullish up here on AI, but at the same time, to your point, Peter, their actual companies are doing things to make it hard. And as a result, and here's what we saw in this paper, the people at the lower levels of the company are actually very skeptical. Not skeptical about the potential, but skeptical about the reality at their company, right? And we can talk in a minute about what they're seeing, but basically they're saying you're telling everyone, to the executive, they're saying you're telling everyone we're going to benefit from AI, but yet you're underinvesting, you're putting roadblocks in our way, you're making it hard, and it's scary because I think it points to something we've spoken about multiple times, which is this gap between ambitions and reality. And it has nothing to do with the potential of AI and everything to do with, are you actually putting the right steps in place to be able to achieve that potential?
See, this harks back to the days in the terms of digital transformation in some way, shape, or form. Like everybody loves these phrases. They love to get out there and tout these phrases. We're doing a digital transformation. Our clients are going to benefit tremendously from all of this. And then they fail miserably.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Do you remember the early days? We're going to go back 20, 30 years, right? But maybe not 30, but do you remember the early days of brick and mortar is dead, the online revolution?
Oh, God,
Every
yes.
company was being told you should just shut
Absolutely.
down all of your physical locations,
Yep,
which, by the way,
absolutely.
is what made it so hilarious when Apple started opening Apple stores, right? Because I don't know if anyone remembers this, but when Apple opened Apple stores, everyone thought they were insane because
Yeah, I know.
every other company was being told, get rid of your physical presence, it's online only. And the point in all this was everyone focused on build a website, build a web store.
That
And
was the
companies
story.
were spending so much money because,
Yep.
people who had the right skills to build online web stores could command a lot of money in those days. And they were completely missing all the other things they needed to do to transform their company to be able to do
Right.
business effectively online. And they were just building these beautiful web pages and web stores, but
Right.
they weren't
Right.
paying attention to their supply chain. They weren't paying attention to how they ship to customers. They weren't paying attention to customer support. They weren't paying attention to their inventory and raw materials management and their
No, nothing.
purchasing, right? And I feel like it's the same thing, like repeating now with AI,
I
right?
know. No, I agree with you. And I remember those days very well. It was, put up a website and they will come. And nothing was more false than that, especially if they didn't have any kind of e-commerce strategy or supply chain management or any of that stuff. And, as you know as well as I do, 90% of them fail. And, a lot of lessons we'll learn. But I look, and
Or
that's a
not.
very different, it's a very different technology. That was, I think, a lot easier because then the implementation of artificial intelligence, which requires a whole nother set of skills across everyone, not just technical people.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're repeating history, which is, it used to be spend enough money on a web store and you don't have to fix the rest of your company. And hey,
Right.
online sales will happen, transformation will happen, right? Well,
It's
obviously
all
that didn't
magic.
happen. Now it's like sign a
Yep.
contract with a cloud provider, purchase lots of licenses for,
Yep.
the AI tool of your choice and turn people loose and magic will happen. That same underlying human led transformation is being overlooked again.
I agree. So let's ask the question. I mean, clearly there's a lot of organizational impact to this, and I think in many ways it's going to slow down adoption.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because you feel like you get burned, you're not getting the organizational support that you need to be successful, and therefore you feel burned, you start questioning management, you go through that whole process. But there clearly is going to be a very big, I think, organizational impact to this. We'll call it half measures to actually deploying AI.
Right, right.
Um, missed opportunities, erosion of trust, like all those, I think, factors are going to come into play. Now, how do you get? I always ask the question: is I think it's too late to say, well, where do you start now? Because most have started, but how do you fix where we're at? I guess is the bigger question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think let's talk through a whole bunch of like the root causes, what we think is happening in here, and how to fix those, because I think that really is the question. And my my fear in all of this is if we're not thoughtful about this, um, what we're going to see is kind of the typical boomerang effect, which is right now everyone's bullish on AI. We're already starting to see people say, "Is it a hype bubble? Is it?" We talked about this in our prior podcast. Is there hype here? And yes, there's a little bit of frothiness and hype, but here's the part that really um, is frustrating to me. The potential is still real. There is tremendous
Right.
opportunity to innovate, to transform. Companies
Hmm.
are trying to take the easy way, again,
Yeah.
as human nature,
Always.
right? We're underinvesting in people, we're underinvesting in training, we're underinvesting in data. We're just signing up for some AI services and hoping that leads to dramatic transformation. Inevitably, that will
Right.
fail. People
Yes.
will then blame the technology. They'll say, well, it wasn't really all it was cracked up to be.
No, it's easy.
And we'll have a pullback. And eventually, the people who got it right will demonstrate that no, it really is transformational. And the
Right.
companies who got it wrong will finally figure out, okay, there was no easy path to get there. We actually have to do the hard work. But like, to me, it's very frustrating because I can see that coming a mile away. I guess I'm feeling a little bit cynical this morning, but I can see it coming a mile away. And we're going to go through this whole cycle of, was it overblown? And the answer is going to be no, it wasn't overblown. You were just like trying to take the cheap way to implement it for a
It's
lot of
just
people.
such No, it's such human nature to do this. And they want to take the easier way out. They think it's all magic. It's going to occur by itself. It's organically. And you and I have been on this bandwagon since we started talking about this well over a year and a half ago, that they're going to get it wrong. And then we saw where this was going and the mistakes that they were going to make. And they're making those mistakes. And they're putting these tools out there with no education, no training, no nothing, no support, and they're wondering why they're having problems and not seeing the return on their investment that they thought they were going to see.
It's so funny because it just the such as you were saying that popped into my head, which is that's at the macro level, right? That's what organizations are doing. It's exactly the same thing we were talking about a couple of weeks ago that humans do when they're interacting with AI, which is you've got this tremendously powerful tool, and yet it has instantly made people so lazy that they won't even spend
I know.
2 minutes writing a well thought out, well structured prompt to an AI
Yep.
tool, right? I'm like, you've got the most powerful tool mankind has ever known, and you can't be bothered to spend 2 minutes writing a 5 sentence prompt. But
They're not scary,
that's what
actually, but
people do.
that's exactly what they're doing. I feel like we have a generation of individuals that don't know how to converse and think and, like I said, write a prompt that is actually going to get you the results that you want. And you and I talk about this all the time. When I write a prompt, it's long, it's very detailed, and that's what's going to get me the results that I want. And, not this one line, 5 word, little short prompt that gets you nowhere, but that's what most people actually do.
Probably like go off now about like our whole society looking for quick fixes to every problem, right? But like I'm not
I
going
know,
to do
but
that. Um, but there is an element of human nature there, which is just we
oh yeah,
want when you get an easy tool, you want it to be even easier, right?
we get lazy.
Like,
Humans get lazy quickly.
yeah, yeah. So, all right, so let's go back to this article, right? So I think again, as we said, the big thing was these executives are afraid to admit they're using it, and yet the paradox is, I think the figure in the paper was that 79% of executives said that they were confident that their companies were going to meet or exceed their AI transformation goals, right? And they also, 8% of them said they were confident in the change management approach that they had selected and were implementing, right? So you look at that, and you're like, okay, setting aside the fact that they're,
Right.
too chicken to admit that they use AI, they've got big goals and they feel confident, right? Almost 4 out of 5 are like, hey, we got this. First of all, okay, before we get to what the survey found, if you lined up a whole
Survey
bunch of
says,
executives and 4 out of 5 said, I got this, what would your reaction be? You, Peter.
oh, me personally would laugh because I can guarantee they don't. I know they don't. I know what they're saying and what they're doing. I know what they're saying versus what they're actually doing are completely disjoint or disconnected. But that's so typical, though. It goes back to the digital transformation days where we're constantly redefining the end goal because we don't want to say, hey, we failed. We just redefine what we were actually trying to achieve. They always, I think that's it goes back to human nature. I got to redefine because I have to be successful. I can't say we screwed up.
Yep. I guess I'll just I agree. We'll just chalk it up to human nature because I don't know what else to call it, but wow,
Nah,
it's crazy stuff.
yes,
I was talking with someone at a large company the other day, and their senior management, executive management, was asking for every business unit to create these long-term plans and for the business long-term strategy. But they wanted to make sure the central part of all the strategies was how much transformation they were going to accomplish and how much money they were going to save through slathering AI like peanut butter over every process. And yet, and so
magic.
these different divisional and business unit leaders were being asked to magic up these answers. They had no training, they had no specific ideas on how they were going to use AI. But here's the part that was crazy. The senior management said, tell me how you're going to use AI to transform the business. And yet senior management at this company has done nothing to get clear, precise, and specific about what kinds of tools, support, and transformation and what level of investment they were willing to make. And so I'm like,
Magic, David.
you
It's
could
all
give any
magic.
number you want. It's meaningless, right?
It's all
Like,
magic.
and that's what they want. They want a meaningless number. I'm like,
They do. It's all
how
magic.
fundamental, how silly do you have to be to not realize that this isn't magic and that you've got to come up with a plan for how you're going to invest, how you're going to support people, how you're going to accomplish a transformation in the skills, the behaviors, the way people operate. And then you can figure out what's a reasonable return. Instead, they're like, hey, tell me about the great returns you're going to get. Don't worry about how we're going to get there. Just tell me about these great returns.
See, I'm always amazed by this because this is not just germane to artificial intelligence, obviously. I think this cuts across new technologies, new approaches, new projects, new transformations consistently. And so much of this goes back to just pure human nature and, senior executives wanting to, at least the perception of being successful. And how do they do that? They get out there and they sell. That's what they try to do. But it's so it's so decoupled from what's really going on the ground, and they're not that objective reality and looking at things objectively and saying, where am I? How do I get to point B and point C and point D? And if I'm not, what do I do to adjust? And most
Maybe we
don't do
should have
that.
gone into behavioral psychology or something. I used to
Oh, I
say,
agree.
so, obviously I used to be a chief data officer at a whole bunch of places. And when people ask me, especially early on in the first, half dozen years of being a CDO, it wasn't a term people were very familiar with. And people were like, what
Right.
does a chief data officer do? I remember I used to always run into people who were pretty convinced that I was responsible for information security. In fact, I had people try to convince me that I was responsible for
Oh, that's
information
too funny.
security. I'm like,
Yeah,
no, that's not really what
not
my
my
job
job.
is. But I used to sort of joke that, like, honestly, I felt sometimes like a psychiatrist more than anything else, trying to,
Yeah,
like, motivate people and help people understand the nature of their problems and why was this, they'd read the infamous Economist headline about data is the new oil, and they were saying,
yeah,
well, I have lots of data. Where's the profit?
right, right.
Why am I not seeing just like new streams of revenue and
Popping out
enhanced
of
profit
nowhere.
margins just flow in because I already have the data? I'm like, well, it's not that easy. So here we go again with AI.
Same stuff again. It's like I'm going to walk into a gym and magically I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger just because I walked into the gym, and I get the same thing. It's like it's just it's magic. It's just going to happen. I'm going to just say AI is going to solve all my problems, and magically it's going to occur. And you and I never forget, when we first started, we did a proposal to a company, and you and I looked at it very methodically and walked through what we thought was a plan that was great, that would have increased revenue dramatically, required the hard work. We pointed out where you can make more money and save money doing some other problems first. And it was immediately shot down because they just wanted to invest in the small stuff. And really, it was, I can do this with ChatGPT. I don't need to actually do all this other work, which you and
They
I
said,
knew wasn't going to get us anywhere.
I want all those benefits you guys said, but I just want to spend like 50K doing it and take the easy way. Yeah. So, okay. So here's the catch. We know this is human behavior. The evidence that came out of this report was so fascinating because, on one hand, back to our senior leaders, right? High confidence in meeting their objectives, high confidence in change management. But then, remember we said in the beginning that the survey
Right.
surveyed senior managers and then surveyed line of
Gen
business
Zs.
workers. What did the line of business workers say? Did their results, obviously, the answer is going to be no, but did their results match up to what the senior leaders said?
Oh, not even close. Not even close. I was actually kind of surprised by the Gen Z approach and, some of what they were saying at the end of the day. And I think, because you and I have always said generationally, it's going to change. The younger ones are going to embrace it far more readily over time. I think because it's new tech, they're going to get used to it. And I think that does bear out, but they're also very afraid to admit it and afraid to use it. I think I might use it to acknowledge that they're using it because they're afraid of their futures and their jobs. So they're more prone to say they did it themselves.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting one. I think you're right. They have a similar behavior to the senior executives, which is not being completely forthcoming about the use of AI, but there's this more driven by fear that they're going to get replaced by AI. There's a fear that the entire generation will, eventually be displaced by AI, and here's the interesting thing: more of them use it. This survey found 89% of Gen Z employees use AI frequently at work, but the catch is, and we've touched on this before, other studies have shown this, they're actually using often unsanctioned tools, right? So they're not. And I want to come back to why you think they're using unsanctioned tools. I have my suspicions, but let's talk about the other part of that. They also said only less than 10% of them had received what they called extensive amounts of training. And look,
Right.
my experience has borne this out. I have seen companies roll out ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, whatever tool, and they give people, maybe a 30-minute online training session and access to some like self-serve training materials and call it done.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
but let me
Right. We
ask you,
see a lot of that.
why do you think if a Gen Z employee came to you and said, yeah, look, I got to admit to you privately, I'm using AI every day, but I'm not using the tools my employer provides me. I'm using my own tools. Why do you think they do that?
Oh, they're not getting access to the best of breed tools. I think they're getting access to, usually it's Copilot because it's embedded in the application, but they're not getting access to ChatGPT fully, or Claude, or any of the other models out there that are incredibly powerful. They're just not
Yeah,
getting access to them
yeah,
to do the types of work that they want to do. So they wind up going on their phones and doing what they need to do, and difficult, just cut and pasting it over, copying it over by hand. And I think that's a lot of what you're saying. Because, and as I as well know, there are a large number of excellent tools out there that there is no way any organization would ever allow their use.
no, I think you're exactly right. I think the tools that are implemented or provided to them are either not fully rolled out, they're handicapped, they've got features deactivated, or they're just not using the best of breed tools.
Right.
And I think generally a lot of younger workers are savvy enough already to know and follow. They know that there are better tools available and they're going to find a way to
100%.
use them.
Absolutely. And they're not getting, like you said, look, they're not getting trained. None of them are getting trained properly, I should say. So they're using these unsanctioned tools, untrained. So they're not using them even to their max potential. So what are you getting at the end of the day?
And it's funny because we were talking about this with Mary in our last podcast. Great
Right.
conversation. If you haven't,
Nation.
we talked a lot about data privacy and responsible AI. And one of the things we
Right.
touched on was, privacy and how real that is anymore, because you come back
Right.
and then tying it to this point, I know of a lot of companies who are prohibiting the use of meeting transcription and
I know.
summarization tools, right?
Right.
And as someone who spends like so many hours a week in calls and meetings, this has helped me tremendously. Like, I
Oh,
have
absolutely. Yes.
summaries and notes from every meeting I do. I have my action items. It's great. But you know what? Like, I just don't believe that people are actually just saying, okay, I won't use these tools. I think they're just turning on a local tool on their local computer, on their iPhone,
Absolutely.
whatever. There's no
Absolutely.
way that people are sitting in hundreds of hours of meetings every month and not using AI to keep track of what they are doing.
Oh,
It's just not
absolutely.
happening.
It's just not reality. And look, and plus, I'm sorry, if you're sitting at home working from home and you're at your desk all day and you're in these meetings and corporate policies to not record the meetings, you can put it on your phone. And you're going to sit there and you're going to record the meeting and you're going to do the same thing. So I think it's incredibly naive to look at it that way and enable the tools, let them be used, maximize their value. And these look, this is only part of, again, this is still at the periphery. You're not using it, really using it. And they again, they have all this fear. They're so afraid to use these tools and enable these tools and train their people. And I feel like all they're doing is stepping on their own feet and they're spending money and not getting any of the return on value that they should be getting.
No, I completely agree. And I 100% think that most people are recording every meeting they're in, whether they're officially
Absolutely.
doing it or doing it on their own tools.
Yes,
And, I would say to people who are locking down the use of those tools at their companies, you have to consider what's the lesser of two evils. Having people
right.
create these recordings on who knows what service with who knows what privacy and security controls, or would you rather have them do it inside your sphere of control on the tools that you administer and maintain?
Exactly. So I remember, and I'm going to pivot for 1 second because you and I have spoken about this a million times. And why do you think organizations are going this route? Is it because the CEO punts it off to the CIO and says, go do this without a real plan? And then I want to pivot to an article I read.
I think it's a number of reasons. I think, so first of all, when I talk to companies about this, the number one most cited reason is legal restrictions. I will also tell you most people who cite legal restrictions do that with a flawed understanding of how these tools work, a flawed understanding of the risks of these AI tools versus the other risks that they're already accepting and living with. And it's just they're not using sound logic when they're making that determination, right? The second closely related is security, right? Lump all that together and it's fear.
Well, I think it's
It's
always fear, right? I think it's usually
yeah,
fear. And to me, it's always lack of understanding more than anything. I mean, and that just, look, quote unquote, I hate it always drove me crazy. Well, regulations say I can't do this. Well, can you quote the regulations? No. And I think that's very often the answer. And it always is driven by fear and risk. And they never work the problem through to the end. So, well, maybe there really isn't a problem here. Let's embrace this. I read an interesting article over the weekend. I think it was Harvard Business Review, actually, about AI transformation projects and how absolutely critical, and not just from words, but from actions, it is for the CEO to be deeply involved in these transformations. And it needs to be
mm,
shown. And the CEO needs to be engaged and not just send out a memo and email to everybody, hey guys, we're going to do AI, to the point where they're speaking to everybody in the company. They're engaged at the lowest levels. They're talking to the lower level employees. They're going to, when you have AI coding events, they're going to these events. They're working with people. They're working through business problems. Even though I know it's an enormous time sink for a CEO, but that's the ones that are successful, where the CEO is engaged at that level and the criticality of that. Otherwise, you get what you get. Everybody, oh, it's
right,
a tool. I'm going to use a tool, and I'm
right.
going to put restrictions around it because of fear and risk and this and that, and you're spending all this money and you're not getting any of the value.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think it's so fascinating that like for some reason we're expecting companies to our companies to benefit from AI and adopt it, et cetera, and yet leaders aren't walking the walk, and yet they wouldn't do that in any other area. Like, let's take the return to office mandates. As unpopular as they all start with the CEOs and
Right,
their leadership teams showing up in the office, right? They're leading by example.
right, right.
Why are they not leading by example with AI?
I don't. It's a good question, actually. And it's I don't know the answer. Like, why not? If this is such an important, it's so important to the success of your organization, how do you outsource it? And usually the CIO, you know as well as I do, is usually two layers down. And then they're just pawning it off on the CIO, the COO, the CFO. They're not engaging themselves, and they'll get the metrics, and those metrics are, yeah, things are going wonderful and great, and everybody's engaged. And again, reality is nobody. It's that's not how it is on the ground. And I don't know why they don't get engaged, other than they can go, well, I don't understand it. These other people are paid to understand it. Um, it's not my job, which is kind of my guess. In a lot of cases, it's not my job. It's easy to punt it off onto somebody else. It's going to be a large time sink and have other things to do. And it's crazy. It's overlooking how important it is to your organization. And if you're not
Eh,
deeply engaged,
Yeah, and it also comes back to that sense of shame we talked about, right? Like look at how here's the thing. And you may remember it was 5 or 6 weeks ago, I sort of tongue in cheek proposed to you on the podcast that maybe CEOs should be replaced by super smart AI models overseen
yeah,
by
yeah,
a
yeah,
board,
no,
right? But let's come back to that. The myth of the CEO today is this is an exceptional human. This is a superhuman. They have
right,
superhuman intelligence. They have superhuman endurance. They have dedication. They have focus, right? It's all about the individual. And we have chosen to believe for 100 years or more that the CEO is an exceptional individual who can do something that normal people can't do. Henry Ford was brilliant. Thomas Edison, brilliant visionary, right? All the way down through the phenomena of, take Steve Jobs, take Jamie Dimon. No doubt these are brilliant people.
they're brilliant men, though.
Absolutely brilliant. And set aside the fact that I just named a bunch of men, because you're right. That's another
Right,
problem. There is a certain sort of machismo tied to the CEO role. We're
yes,
finally seeing in the last 20 years far more women leaders, women leading
absolutely,
corporations, but it's still very rooted in I'm a Superman. I can do all these things, and so showing that I'm using AI is sort of like almost putting the lie to the idea that I'm this super capable person, more capable than mere mortals, and I don't need AI because I'm
right,
super smart. Like,
right. No, I think you're hitting on an interesting
I
point,
don't I
actually.
don't want to be known for being super smart. I always tell people, you know what? One of my superpowers, if you will, is I'm inherently lazy. I like learning things, but
So,
my God,
right,
if I can spend 100 hours learning something that will save me 1,000 hours or 5,000 hours later, that's my laziness kicking in. I've got no desire to do the hard work just because it's
exactly,
hard.
right.
I want to take the most quick and effective way to get from A to B.
I want to maximize my time, and I'm going to maximize it in any way possible. And if I have an incredibly powerful tool in front of me, sure as hell I'm using that tool. It's no different than all the woodworking I do. I'm not going to go out back to, using a hand planer and a hand saw and hammering nails if I could have power tools that are going to do it 10 times more effective. I'm just not going to do that. It just makes no sense. And I think you're right. There is a certain machismo when you get to the top. And a lot of it is, I fought my battles to get here. I deserve it. I don't need these tools. And I think that is just so backwards. And like you named a handful of incredible CEOs that, everybody writes about, knows about there, but they're the exception, not the norm. Most CEOs are
Right.
not like that. They are the guys that, well, females that have made it up through the ranks, who've done their roles, who've worked hard for 30 years in a company and now made it to the top because they're the safe choice. That's
Right.
superhuman, and many of them are deeply flawed. Yeah, it's so, they need to be, if they want this change to occur in an organization. And it's, well, I've done it this way for so many years, therefore I can't see why I can make it better. To me
Right.
is always, I don't know, stupid.
Do do you think we'll see in the near future a new crop of AI forward CEOs who are less about the flash and glamour and myth of that individual and more about I'm an effective leader and I use my tools, including AI, effectively?
I want to believe that's the case, that we'll see some of those, and I have no doubt that there'll be some of those. I think a lot of them will be driven purely by fear when they see that their competitors are embracing it far more readily, and their competitive CEOs are embracing it far more readily and being open about it and engaged about it and talking fluently about it. And then they, through fear, I hate to say that, but most individuals are driven through fear, will then embrace it, and all of a sudden it'll become their new, yeah, we're doing this, I'm going to be engaged. rather than a new crop of enlightened individuals who truly appreciate the power and are willing to use it. I'd love to think that, and I'm sure there are those that will take that route, but I think
I
more.
think I share your skepticism. I
Yes,
just feel like as long as boards continue to lavish crazy amounts of financial rewards on CEOs the way that we've seen in the last, couple of decades, right? There's
right.
like an insane amount of billionaire CEOs, at least on paper valuation, billionaire
Yep.
CEOs out there. Amount of compensation is going to continue to attract the wrong people to being company leaders. It's going to attract egomaniacs, it's going to attract control freaks, it's going to attract the people who strive for power and prestige and wealth, not the people who are achievement focused on who are about achieving results on the part of their company. Now, there are some CEOs that meet that they're the
Some.
good kind out there, but
Yeah, no,
uh,
absolutely.
they're not the ones that they're in the minority.
They're in the look. The CEO that becomes a CEO reluctantly and doesn't want the job are usually the ones that you want in the role that are willing to make these changes. The one that fights tooth and nail for it and steps on everybody, not the one you usually want in place to do these types of things and lead these types of transformations, which are in many ways, they're deeply personal. They're hard. They are going to impact a lot of people, how they perceive their jobs and everything. There's a lot of psychology behind this, and most CEOs I don't think are capable of actually handling that.
So it comes again back to uncertainty and fear about AI, because once you have any sort of power, you're going to fight to retain that power. That's another aspect of human nature.
Yeah,
And if you view that you're publicly disclosing your reliance on AI, that is in effect an admission that you are replaceable, which runs completely against your goal of preserving and consolidating your stronghold on your
right.
power.
So much of those roles are how they, I think, view themselves. And now you're putting in a tool that's incredibly powerful that can, in many ways, replace what they do on a regular basis. And all of a sudden, you're going to not use it. You're not going to acknowledge it. You're going to fight it tooth and nail.
Now, we've talked about this. Like, I hate the idea that using AI is somehow diminishing the value of the work I do. It's making me replaceable. I reject that,
I reject that.
because I still have to know what to do. I have to know how to write a prompt. I have to know how to review and incorporate the output of AI. I have to have enough common sense and experience and wisdom to interpret what it's telling me, to weed out the junk from the nuggets of wisdom, right? It's just
Absolutely.
accelerating that process. It's the same as if I read research manually. I could go read a bunch of research papers. And you know what? Just because it's a published paper doesn't mean it's any good. 80% of what you read out there
Right.
is absolute junk.
Absolutely.
You've got to use your brain, and you've got to interpret it and weed through it. If I can do that same work faster with AI, I'm still interpreting it and weeding out the junk.
I think that gets lost in the message someplace. Everybody
It
thinks that
does.
artificial intelligence is going to eliminate your need to think, and it's nothing further from the truth. In fact, I think it's often harder because, as you say, and as I say, look, we use, look, I will no bones about it. Use these tools extensively. They have made me orders of magnitude more efficient and better as just overall in the work that I do. But when I use them, I'm still going through. I'm creating a prompt that's very complex. I am the output I'm looking at. I'm going over the output. I am, yes, it's made me faster. Things that might have taken me weeks now take me hours, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I have 35 years of experience and I'm using those 35 years to do this work. I still need that experience, and I couldn't do that work without that experience.
So I think that sense of I could be replaced by AI is often driven by the way people use it, which, to be honest, the way most people use AI tools today, they could be replaced, because they are literally taking the lowest possible effort route to get an answer, and then they're copying and pasting the exact answer they got from AI into their work. And you know what? You could be replaced by a keyboard macro if that's all you're doing.
Exactly. I know, 100%. But let's start, let's kind of go back to something we had said earlier. And there is an enormous education gap here that I do think if you're educated properly on the tools, you truly understand the capabilities of the tools and you know what you can do with them. And then it's not such a, I'm going to hide that I'm using this, but it's a tool that I'm using to augment myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think you're right. It's education. It's understanding the proper way of using it. I mean, the missed opportunity here is huge, right? A CEO could be the champion and the visible leader for the effective and appropriate use of AI. They could be the one saying, yes, I use AI, but let me tell you how I use it.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
they could be setting the tone and the direction for the company on what responsible, effective, mature use of these tools looks like.
Right. Right. No, 110%. Absolutely. Imagine the power of a CEO, speaking to his people, showing them this two-page prompt that they had developed to make their lives a bit better, or their jobs a little bit easier, or they can extract insights they couldn't have before. That's powerful. That's going to set a tone for an organization that
Yeah.
is going to change the organization.
And by the way, like I agree with you 100%. And it doesn't have to be a CEO. It could be a department leader. It could be a team leader. Like if you're leading a team of people, open the kimono. Like use it proudly, use it effectively, and share how you're using it with your team. One of the cool things I
Absolutely.
have started seeing, and I love this phenomenon, and if any of you listening to me are the people who I've seen doing this, you'll know who you are, and I love that you do this. I've seen people who now not only share something and say, oh, by the way, I use some AI to do it, they share the prompt. They say,
Yeah, I
hey,
see that.
here's what I did. Here's my prompt. Here's the output. And that is phenomenal because now it takes what might have been seen as disclosure, right? I'm
Yeah,
disclosing that I use this into a
right.
teaching moment where you're like,
I
hey,
love
I
that.
used it. Here's how, so that you
Right.
can do something similar.
No, I love when people do that. And when I go online and I look, I solved this problem. This is the prompt that was associated with it. I learn a lot that way. I find it incredibly helpful. I will tell you also, there are a million different ways to write a prompt. There is no one way to write a prompt, which is exactly as you would expect. But yeah, no, I love when people go out there and do that. It just demystifies these tools, but it also shows you how to really use them to the maximum capabilities. And it's not just a one line, write me an email, something like this, a real basic. It's much more powerful than that.
My pet peeve is even the tools that are out there, right? Like, I won't pick on any particular vendor, but like, there's a lot of tools you can like write something and there's a little button that says like, make this more formal, make it less
Oh
formal.
yeah, I know.
That, that drives me nuts because that is reinforcing the false
Hmm.
idea in people's heads that you can just say a few words and get something valuable. No, I'm
No,
sorry. In real life, do you ever say, make this more formal? No. I
no, never.
say, hey, here's some ideas. Here's the audience. Here's what I wanted to convey. I want it to be this long. I
Right.
want it right. And you give them a whole set. Here's what I think they know and don't know. Here's what I want to focus on. Please stay away from this. I want the
Yeah,
tone to look like this or this or this. Like, you spend a lot of time and then you
absolutely.
say, now rewrite this for me. You don't just say, make it more formal, make it more casual, make it friendly. That's garbage.
Yeah, so two things. I think, yes, you're 110% right. And that's why, I think a lot of these tools are at the periphery and they're not adding on the value people think they're going to add, because they're embedded in a lot of these existing tools. The other thing that drives me insane, and it's been my pet peeve, as you well know, are, I will call them AI influencers. They get out there and they pontificate with little one-line blurbs, and it just they make it seem like it's easy, and it's not. It's to do this the right way. It takes education, it takes knowledge, it takes time. It's hard, and they make it seem like it's trivial with
Yeah.
these. I'm going to write a long article, and it's going to be one line, and it's all. Anyway, what I'm saying. They're out there. You
No,
can find them very easily.
100% agree with you. And I want to make one thing clear. Like when we say it's hard, we're not gatekeeping. We're not saying, therefore, you shouldn't do it. I will also say anyone can do it. Everyone can do it. But like any tool, you just need to be willing to spend a little bit of time learning and you need to put some effort into its use. If you treat it like the easy button, I'm just going to tap the button and magic happens, you will not be successful. Anyone can learn to use AI tools effectively, but you have to be willing to learn.
So let's step back for a second. So you are now walking into an organization, as we often do, and you're now confronted with an organization that is in the middle of doing exactly what we just described. People using it, not saying they're using it, access to poor tooling, not access to the good tools, yada 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 yada. What do you tell them? How do you get them past this, wall that they've hit where they're not getting the value they thought they were going to get, yet they're spending all this money on all these tools because Copilot jacked up the price of every Office license as soon as they incorporated AI into it. Everybody jacks up the price as soon as they incorporate AI into it. And
Yep.
yet, so they're seeing their bills grow. They're not seeing a return on productivity. They're not admitting to the reuse. So there's all these issues. How do you get an organization past that?
Oh boy. I mean, this like the short
Hardly any
answer is
questions.
you need a multi-pronged strategy. And let me take a couple of things that you hit on there. One is you rolled out the tools, but what else did you do? Right? So making tools available to people is great, but it's woefully insufficient. You have to have a true transformation program that involves lots of training, lots of support, lots of modeling the correct behaviors by other people, and even going so far as to figure out how do you create a reward system that incents the kind of behavior you want to incent. Right? This is a fundamental change to how you train and educate people and equip them to do their job. But more importantly, rolling out tools at a personal level, the ability to use a tool as a worker,
Right.
is a good first step. It is not a strategy. It is a step along the path. And this is the other area where I feel like a lot of organizations are kind of being misled by the marketing and by the AI influencers and by all these, snazzy articles saying how everyone's doing it, you should do it too, and you should profit, which is they're thinking, okay, I just have to put these tools in the hands of my employees and magic will happen. Well,
Right.
personal productivity tools, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, etc., are one tiny portion of the whole puzzle, right?
Right.
And they are not the portion that is going to deliver a lot of measurable, tangible productivity and efficiency gains. You've got to have a broad spectrum of AI solutions. You've got to be looking at AI for code generation. You've got to be looking at AI for document retrieval, Q&A over documents. You've got to look at AI in customer facing
Yep.
capacities. You've got to look at workflow automation and the use of agentic AI. You've got to be embedding AI into applications and into business processes. Everything I talked about that's all above and beyond giving individuals the ability to use AI. In fact, I would argue that you're never going to actually measure the benefit of giving people the ability to use AI. If there's a benefit, it's the fact that we're rapidly entering an era where if you don't do this, you're not going to be an employer of choice.
Right.
Right.
No, I
Right.
100% agree with you. Let me ask you a question. Would you give a compound miter saw to a user to just go crazy without any training?
What could go wrong?
Nothing. They could lose their hand. So
Yeah.
I guess my point is just to kind of throw a little, laughter into this conversation.
Yeah.
My point,
No.
my point.
So it's funny you said that because right, that harkens again back to our conversation with Mary Zetta last week on responsible AI. Like these are powerful tools; they can do some great stuff. They can also do some damage if you're not careful. And
Right.
and you're right. So that multi-pronged strategy also has to include guardrails and responsible AI.
Right.
So
Right.
look, I think it goes back to like everyone's looking for the easy way out. Giving people these tools is a great first step, but it is not a transformation in and of itself. And the real benefits, the real financially classifiable benefits are going to be when you deeply embed AI into business processes, into tools, into applications. It's not going to be
Right. Right.
10,000 people using Copilot or Gemini or Claude every day. They're going to get a little bit of incremental benefit. They'll be happier. They'll be more productive. I think there's a hidden benefit, which is they'll come to the table to a meeting with a more up-to-date understanding because it's easier for them to review materials and find materials, right? So there's a virtue cycle there, but
Right.
that's not where the pot of gold is at the end of this rainbow.
No, no, not even close. And we're not even close to it yet. But I think when firms start really, like you said, describe using their information, really using it, is then where you're going to get the real value here. Not because OpenAI is embedded into Copilot. That's not the answer at the end of the day. It's not going to get you where you want to be by any stretch of the imagination. Now,
Okay, so how do we sum this up to people? Like one, you know, don't Don't be embarrassed that you use AI. Be proud. Be proud, assuming you're using it effectively. And if you are embarrassed, look at why. Are you embarrassed because you're being lazy about it and you're not putting in the work to use it effectively? Fix that.
Well, and I'm almost, I agree with you, but I also think it's okay to put up your hand, even as a senior leader, and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm using it. I can tell you for a fact I'm not using it as effectively as I can be using it, and I want to learn how to use it effectively. Because
Speaking of AI, when you put up your hand, your camera just interpreted
I was
that
just
as a
going to say it just
command.
totally readjusted. I saw that, I know. And that is all AI, people. Yes, it is.
Love it. No,
Gotta love these tools.
I agree with you. There's a certain courage. Is it too cheesy to call it courage? But like, be a leader. If you're using it, show it.
Change is hard. Let's be honest. Change is not easy, especially this is deeply profound organizational change. It's personal change. It's personal growth. It touches on a lot of things. It's not just putting another SaaS solution into an organization and you have to learn a series of screens and a new process. It really requires you to think and really think, and it requires another level of knowledge. It requires, I think, for a lot of people, going against reevaluating how they learn and changing
Yeah.
things dramatically. And I think for a lot of people, that's just hard. But it really, if you want to get the most out of these incredibly capable tools, and as you put it, probably the most powerful tools that man has ever developed, you have to learn how to use them effectively. And that just
And
takes acknowledging that you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know a lot, and that's okay. You have to learn.
there is more. I've never seen a time when we have more resources for learning out there.
I know.
Most of them are free. Some of them are not. But I mean, there are so many online courses and resources and articles and books. We're surrounded by information. And by the way,
I'm set.
a great place to start is use your favorite chat agent. Tell it
Exactly.
what you know, tell it what you don't know, tell it how you like to learn, and ask
Right.
for a set of recommendations on what to learn. Turn on deep research mode if you do that. You want it to go out and scour the web. You don't want it to just be basing its answers on what's already pre-built into the model. And if that sentence I said doesn't make any sense to you, then you do need to learn about how these tools work. Um,
Exactly.
but like, we have so many abilities to learn right now. But the other thing, you made a joke at a comment at the beginning of the podcast about playing, and I look, I believe more than ever that the other essential thing is play. Play,
Yeah.
play, play with these tools. Play,
Exactly.
learn, try it out. Um, there is,
The only That's
yeah,
the
go
only way to
ahead.
learn. I think that's, I use the term play because it's, to me, it's playing, but you're actively learning. And even though I'm playing, but I'm still actively engaged in learning, and that's how I learn. And I think that's how most of us learn, by doing, making mistakes, starting again, going through it all over again, and without that fear. And I think these days, the fear of learning and the fear of being embarrassed in front of a room of people is, you don't need to, you could do this all by yourself in your house. You don't, that
Yeah,
fear shouldn't be there anymore. And it's
yeah.
okay to say, I learned, it was hard. It's okay.
You can do it on the beach. You can do it, in your white
Absolutely.
shoes. You can wherever you want to do it. There's a museum in Rochester, New York, called the Museum of Play. The Strong Museum of Play, I think, is its official name. And one of the tenets behind it is that they're trying to remind people of the value of play. Play gets trivialized as something that only little kids should do, and you should grow out of it. And I guess I'm grateful
Yeah.
to say that um, I haven't grown out of it yet. I don't show any signs of
No.
growing out of my love to play.
So do I. I
Yeah,
think that this is one of the reasons you and I bonded so fast.
but like,
We have this
how?
childlike joy of playing.
Yeah, and I feel sad for all the people who um, you know, stuff themselves into their drab suit and tie and go to work every day and pretend to be
Oh,
serious all day. I'm sorry. If you're pretending to be serious all day, you're killing yourself. Like, how is that? How are you learning? You're stifling yourself.
I
Um,
tell everybody I am a grown man that never grew up, and I refuse to. I enjoy just learning. To me is a chronic habit. I
is
do
your
it all the
middle name
time.
Pan?
Yeah, yes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much. I just refuse to grow up. I mean, hey, come on. I mean, why? Look, what benefit is there to being serious all the time and not learning? Look, I love that my brain still wants to constantly engage in new things and learn all the time and learn hard things. And I think that is so important. And I can't imagine ever losing that desire to do that. And I feel like so many executives and CEOs, they get to a point where I don't need to do it. They just don't want to do it anymore. They don't have time and make it an excuse or this. And I get that, but you cannot not do it. You need to learn this stuff.
So at a personal level, learn and play. That's like, if you do nothing else, just learn and play. At an
Yes,
organizational level, I think we kind of touched on a couple of things. One, we touched on that you can't you can't overestimate. It's easy to underestimate. You can't
estimate.
overestimate the requirement for real transformation, training, and support beyond just giving people tools, right? It's
Right.
a matter of safety. It's a matter of effectiveness. It's a matter of adoption. You've got to do it. And two is providing people tools is only the tip of the iceberg. It's about embedding AI into your business processes. Like the most effective AI isn't the AI that people interact with. It's the AI that's built into an automated process or an application,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So have a
Yep. 100%.
comprehensive strategy.
And again, we'll always say this is not easy work. It takes time, it takes thoughtfulness, but all levels have got to be engaged. Again, it's not magic. It is just plain and simple. It's just hard work, valuable
So
work.
shameless plug, Peter. Do you know anyone that could help companies create that comprehensive strategy, execute that strategy, train people, and build solutions?
Oh, that might be us all in on data. That's what we do. That's
Right.
exactly
I
what we
mean,
do.
that's exactly what we have
We
been having
do.
so much fun doing
Exactly.
is that. So yeah, it's obviously you could say it's a little self-serving of us to say this is the secret, but I would say to people, no, we're doing this because this is what we learned is the secret. We're not saying do this because it's what we're selling. We're saying we're selling this because we learned this is how you make AI effective.
Exactly. Exactly. And then look, again, you and I love this stuff. We love the learning. We love educating people on this. This is our passion. This is what we do day in and day out. And then implementing it. I mean, this is the stuff that we thoroughly enjoy. Um, and we hope it's infectious to everybody because I think we come across that way.
Yeah, I always have people telling us, maybe we'll do this one day. Like people are always saying, hey, show us the cool stuff you're playing with these days. What are you working on? What, right? So like,
Yeah, we
I
should.
almost want to have a whole podcast that's a show and tell podcast about different ways that we're using AI, different tools we're using, different
I know.
things we've learned, tips, tricks. If
Oh,
anyone listening
100%.
to this thinks that would be fun to do, drop us a note or something. I'm really serious. It might
Please.
be kind of cool to do a show and tell.
No, I think it would be great actually if we did that because again, you and I have integrated so much of these tools into so many aspects of our life now that I can't imagine not having them. And it's like everything I do now, it's like the first question is, well, I can just put it through an AI model. Let me see that first. Let me see what I do. Let me see if I can optimize for. That's just now my first. It's just the way of thinking. I've changed my
Yeah.
thinking around so much.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Ah, yeah, it is. Well, listen, Peter, always a fun
Always,
conversation. I'm
always.
glad that neither of us is ashamed of using AI.
No, proudly. I will
Good.
readily
Let's
acknowledge my
keep it that way.
limitations. Yes, I will readily acknowledge my limitations as a human and certainly use these tools to make me better.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep, exactly. Thank you again for another great
Yes.
conversation, Peter. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining us
David.
on Call Me Data.
Always a pleasure. And listen,
And
everybody,
see you
have
next
a
time.
yep, have a great day. And any comments, please feel free to post them. But yep, David, have a great day.
Okay. See ya. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks for watching Call Me Data. If you enjoyed our podcast, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And make sure to stay up to date with us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.